Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. Welcome back. This is the nonfiction book tag, the Nosy edition. Got my nice aquiline Dutch nose there. This was created by Sean D. Standfast, I believe like 2 weeks ago. I was tagged by David Murphy. It's been a busy week. So jumping into it now. And these are great prompts. So prompt 1, what subject or area of nonfiction did you begin with? Was there a specific event, person, or book that set you on that path? Yes, very simple. If you look on my shirt here, T-Rex hates push-ups. This is from the Field Museum in Chicago. My first love of nonfiction was, like many 3 and 4 year olds, dinosaurs. So this is not a book I read when I was 4 or 5, but dinosaurs were a huge passion of mine. I loved them dearly. I read so many books on them. I really, the eyewitness books. So I read a huge number of those eyewitness books that would be on a subject, but I would check out the dinosaur book from the library over and over and over. And I checked out a lot of those, like the castle one or the Viking one or the Egyptian pyramid one or butterflies. Like those eyewitness books with the great, like big full color pictures and all the text. I absolutely loved those. This is cool because I always dug these like fossil pictures where you could see, just really interesting diagrams. I could not have understood this when I was 6 or 7, but that wouldn't have stopped me from trying to read it and look up words I didn't know in the dictionary and try to understand it because I had a real passion for dinosaurs. I thought they were fascinating. So that's dinosaur papers. Then, I've grown up here in Arizona. Tombstone came out in the very early 1990s. That was probably a formative film for a lot of people in Arizona, to the extent that I graduated in 2004, but my high school's prom theme several years earlier, in the late 90s, was I'm Your Huckleberry, the Doc Holliday quote from Tombstone. So the other sort of area of interest that was a real passion for me in terms of like more strict nonfiction was the Old West, and someone had, I think it was Bryant Books, said the Old West series was a favorite of his as well, and so these were fantastic. I used to check these books out from the library. My school library had a set of them, the public library had a set of them. I've slowly acquired a number of them that I really enjoy. This was the best volume, the Gunfighters. What's great about these is they were real large books, and so they had great, pictures, but then they would have pages filled with text. And what was cool was each book there was like 26 or 27 books. Each book was separated into 5 or 6 like section chapters, focus points. And so you could sit down as a 7 or 8 year old and read that entire chapter or section in a day. And it wasn't too difficult. And there weren't too many words you had to go look up. And then they had all the great pictures. I'm pretty sure it was Brian at Bookish mentioned the fact that there's like a great like diagram of the gunfight at the OK Corral, and then the fold out that was every young boy's fascination to an inordinate degree with all of the different pistols available during the Old West. So the Gunfighter was great. The Soldiers was another favorite, I think, for many, in large part because the final 50 pages of it are devoted to this individual, George Custer. Great paintings of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And this book did a nice job of dispelling some of the myths around, Custer might have been brave, but he was a fool in many ways. And I'm being willing to admit that this book never goes in and flat out calls out, the genocide that was occurring with Native Americans, but it does point out that the Native Americans weren't a bunch of like incompetent savages. That there was intelligence, there was culture there. And to tie into that, you had the Great Chiefs, not the best title. And one of the really fascinating ones, again, being an Arizona boy, was this section. The 3rd chapter is on the Apache, the Chiricahua Apache, which would have included Geronimo and the famous Cochise. but also the whitetail Apache, who still live to a certain degree. Their reservation area is near where their tribal habitat and lands were in the 1800s. And so this series is pictures of Geronimo over the years of his captivity, his 20 plus year captivity, and you see how he changes, how his dress changes. So those Old West books were great. Loved them, read them all the time. And then World War II as well. So my great-grandparents were part of the Dutch resistance during World War II. My grandfather was like 9. He was sent to hide in the Frieslands of the northern Netherlands. He then came to the U.S. as a pilot for the Dutch Air Force after World War II in the 1950s, training as part of NATO programs, training on American jets. He met my grandmother in Arkansas, married, resigned from the Air Force to stay here in the U.S. So he showed my father The Great Escape when that came out in the 60s and was like, this is really important, you need to watch this. My father showed that to me when I was probably 6, and to the extent that my younger brother and I may or may not have dug like a 7-foot deep hole in our backyard, the tunnel. And so I remember going and finding the book The Great Escape by Paul Brickhill at the public library. It was one of the first nonfiction books in the adult section that I went and found, and reading that, and then again checking it out again and rereading it, and just sort of digging into those types of concepts. And that unleashed a whole let me find out everything I can about World War II phase. So, prompt 2, where did you get your first books to feed your new passion? Did you have any guidance from anyone? Guidance, I guess I would ask adults questions about things I was interested in, just any adult. Parents of friends, grandparents, family members, teachers, the librarian. I wasn't afraid to ask questions. And I got probably most of mine from the library, public library, school library. Would borrow books from my grandparents. And my dad had a lot of books and a lot of National Geographic magazines as well. So I read a lot of articles about science in there. Prompt 3, is your first love still the love of your nonfiction reading life, or was it a gateway to other subjects that took over at number 1? I still read. I probably don't read a huge amount about dinosaurs, but I still do read about science. I taught science taught physics, chemistry, biology, integrated sciences. I teach mathematics now. So I don't read a whole lot about dinosaurs right now. I enjoy reading about it with my kids. I don't read about the Old West exhaustively. I've read enough at this point about the Old West that I return to read passages I like, or to reread something that I make a connection to in life or in something else. I don't necessarily go and reread entire books of nonfiction about the Old West now. But I do enjoy history. Is probably the one I read the most nonfiction from. Prompt 4, did you pursue any of your interests with formal education at the university level? My undergraduate degree is in molecular biology, but my minor was in the classics, so I did read a fair amount of the classics, and by classics it was like Greek and Latin classics up through the Renaissance, sort of like 1600-ish as a good benchmark. I enjoyed molecular biology. I learned a huge amount, and I enjoyed the classics. I learned a vast amount there. I don't speak or read Greek or Latin, but I read everything in translation, but I read quite a bit. Some specific books probably that jump out from that. So Plato, this is the Timaeus and Critias, and you've got Plato and Aristotle in the Raphael's School of Athens. Yeah. School of Athens by Raphael. Great painting. And the Histories of Herodotus. This is a kind of a battered copy for me. It's now my daughter's copy. Actually, you can see her little bookmark in here. We read passages from this together. This is her copy now, and we you can see it's been through the years. But I love Herodotus. Still read Herodotus, and read Herodotus probably in grade school the first time, and then again in college, and now, of course. What level did you finish? Well, I have a minor in the classics, which is history. It's about the closest I've come. And I have not made my profession. I'm a surreal estate agent. I sell people their dreams by educating them and helping them be able to think critically and think creatively. So that's my profession. Prompt 5. If you have maintained that first interest all of your life, do you feel you should have pursued other interests or subjects? I try to read kind of across the board. I enjoy watching movies, so I've read like Easy Riders and Raging Bulls. I thought that was a great book about sort of film in the 70s. I love prog rock, so I have that Yes is the Answer book that I've shown before. I really do try to like dip into many different aspects of nonfiction and enjoy them. And so I don't think I've lost anything by pursuing that. Prompt 6, are you now a specialist? Absolutely not. Like I said, I don't read Greek or Latin. My master's degree is in education, and I've taken some extra courses on like gifted education. I teach in an alternative school, so I've had to read a fair amount about education and can read sort of the technical writing there. And I teach AP statistics, so I can interpret data and statistical evidence within most like technical writing. And I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I enjoy being able to sort of understand the interpretation, understand what is actually there versus what is just being told to me. So I don't read only within one area of nonfiction. I read probably history more than anything, but I still read science. You have to stay up to date with that. Do I read fiction? Absolutely. These are like spy novels. These are some mysteries. These are mysteries. Those are mysteries. So I read a lot of crime fiction. Science fiction is down here and like over there. So I enjoy fiction. Prompt 7. If you're a specialist, but I'm not, or not, do you prefer academic studies, general works, or scholarly but not overly academic works? This is a good example. So Rubicon by Tom Holland tears into sort of the final 3 generations of the Roman Republic: Marius and Sulla, Caesar, Pompey, and to a certain extent Cato, and then Octavian and Antony. And I don't necessarily enjoy super scholarly works. I don't go into footnotes and endnotes and bibliography super intensively. I enjoy I don't necessarily enjoy like the massive gears of history or the minutiae of battle tactics. I enjoy the weird, quirky ironies that exist within history. For example, within Rubicon there's a debate on the Senate floor. Caesar and Cato already hate each other. There's a dangerous conspiracy going on. Caesar gets a note. Cato demands Caesar is conspiring as part of this dangerous conspiracy against the Republic. We must read this note on the floor of the Senate and expose the conspiracy that he's part of. And it's a love letter with an assignation between Cato's sister and Caesar. So the irony of all of that is just fantastic. That's the stuff that makes me chuckle, is the humanity of history, not necessarily the great gears of history. I also enjoy the Stephen Jay Gould essays. Love them. I'll copy PDFs of these and share them with students who are really interested in biology. I think it's just or statistics. I think they're fantastic. In terms of physical sciences, Brian Greene's The Hidden Reality might be one of my favorites. Kip Thorne's Black Holes and Time Warps is also an absolutely great one. And but this is great. This is all about The Hidden Reality is all about the idea of parallel universes or multiverses, and it presents like several different models for how that could exist. Brain theory, string theory, holographic universes, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, all sorts of just really fascinating information. And again, you don't have to have a master's degree to understand this. You have to be literate, and I don't just mean able to read letters and decipher sounds, but functionally literate. But you don't have to be a master's in a science to understand The Hidden Reality. It's a great book. So that's more like what I go in for now. Prompt 8, do you collect books in your area of interest? Read or pass? I read most of my nonfiction probably has been from the library. These are all books I own. Some of these the Old West, partially for sentimental reasons. I reread Plato every year. Brian Greene, Stephen Jay Gould, I share those with my students. And some of the, Herodotus I share with my daughters. So those are sort of the books I buy and collect. I don't necessarily care what format they're in, which I think is the later part of this. Hardcover or paperback. Paperback's usually what I can find, but I'll take hardcover. There's nothing wrong with that. First editions, I don't know if I own any. Fine condition or ex-library. Most of my Library of America books up here and up here are ex-library books. I don't like underlining and highlighting, but I'm okay with ex-library books. I'm a teacher, so I use my teacher discounts where I can, and that's where I get most of the books I purchase. So prompt 9, do you read or collect exclusively newer publications? Do you enjoy reading what writers had to say on your subject in the past as well? Well, it's absolutely fantastic and humbling to read science articles or essays or texts or treatises from the past, because you see writers who are super intelligent for their time making absolutely, incredible mistakes and inaccuracies. And it's humbling to be able to read them and realize, okay, they were about as intelligent as anyone could be at that time, and we could consider some of their ideas laughable in 2020. So what are the ideas that I think are accurate from my knowledge, from my time, and could those ever be considered laughable? So I just try to stay humble. So I definitely read older works. I read some newer publications, but certainly not exclusively. What is the oldest book I have? These two are the oldest hardbacks I have. Titans of Literature and Prometheans, Ancient and Modern by Burton Rasco. This one is from 1932. This one is from, I think, 1934 or 35. And I read this book in college. It was in the dorm library, and we were studying, and I got bored of studying, picked this up, started reading it. Some of it was wildly nonsensical, but it also had some chapters on Petronius and Apuleius and Lucian, none of whom I'd ever heard of, all of whom I read within the next 3 years and deeply appreciated. So those are two of the oldest hardbacks I have. I think I picked this one up for like $3 on eBay. And then my oldest paperbacks are all Viking portables, and they're all from the early 1950s. So I've got Portable Greek Reader, Portable Plato, and then the Portable Elizabethan Reader. And I just love the Viking portable anthologies. So those are, the oldest books I own. What's prompt 10, most of you ever paid for a book in your area of interest? It has to be under $30. I mean, probably closer to 20. I think everything I've shown here I probably picked up for under $10 at some type of used book sale or used bookstore. So I have a large library, but not an expensive library. And then prompt 11, tag away. If you have not done this yet, it's been around for a while. If you haven't done this yet, these are great prompts. They really help you think through how you've learned from nonfiction over the course of your life. So I enjoyed them. Thanks again for watching and listening. Comment if you've read any of these, if you think that I'm on the right track or on the wrong track. Always appreciate it. So thanks, everybody. Bye.